Welcome to the Bear Talk, your go-to Chicago Bears podcast where a father and son break down all things Bears from Soldier Field to Sunday showdowns. We're here in episode 4 this week, Dad. Looking to break down last week's game from the Buffalo Bills and Chicago Bears matchup to what happened in training camp this week with Tyson Bagent, and also going to be recapping that Bears versus Chiefs games that happened a couple days ago. Where do you want to start off in this episode?
Tyson Tyson is nipping at the heels of Caleb Williams is all I'm going to say as we wrap up the preseason. One, the emotional press conference signing, the 2-year for 10 mil, which was a beautiful press conference, by the way. Anytime, a son shouts out to his dad during that press conference and kind of the emotions that he displayed was pretty impressive. Uh, Even got me a little emotional. Um, but back to the Bears. Tyson looked good, right? He earned that 10 million. Caleb looked good as well too, right? Let's be honest. 100, I believe, is his QBR through all the preseason play that he had. 68% completion, 220 yards, and a couple tutties. The Bills game, that first drive was something else, right? And I think it was maybe a little bit of a false hope that that's what the rest of the preseason would look like. But that I tell you what, that first drive, you and I screaming on the phone as we're watching that game, pretty impressive. The quickness, the decisiveness, how quick he got the ball out. Wasn't a lot of dancing around in the pocket and was very decisive with the ball. But then we got to the second preseason game that he played in, which was a surprise. Ben Johnson, third game of the year for the preseason, had the starters play, most of the half, which is pretty exciting to see, especially when you love football. Um, but not the same emotions I had during the Bills game as we watched through that. So all I'm gonna say is 15-2. I still feel strong about it. ChatGPT today just confirmed that I am delusional, and that I think it's 8 and 9 is what ChatGPT told me would be a more realistic number to have, which is even under the number you have on the year. But I'm still taking the mythical new head coach bump in there as well as the roster. I mean, we talked about the roster in episode 1 of this thing. Um, the roster is impressive. I don't see the same productivity and outcome that I would expect looking on paper uh, of what I think we should have. But if you think about it, what the completions were last year, 62%. This year, he's averaging 68%. He's 2% off his target goal that Ben Johnson and him had set of the 70%. He's taken only one sack, which, that's 67 less than he took all last year. I know that's just a small sample size through a couple series and 2 preseason games. But with the completion percentage too, up to 102%, that's pretty respectable too compared to what he had last year. So I'm optimistic still. I'm still a big fan. I think though the media and those in the know did everyone a disservice last year because we all heard the term, right? Generational talent. And when you hear those words, you think of holy cow, groundbreaking, change the world. And I don't think he's there yet. So maybe if we just had build him as Caleb Williams, the number 1 draft pick, Heisman winner out of USC, who's got some pretty good skills and abilities, is going to be arguably the best rookie QB we've had based on records, right? Uh,
Yeah, statistically, it already is. He already broke the rookie
yeah,
quarterback passing
that's what
record,
I'm
which
saying.
it's a low bar, but he did break it. So credit where it's due, but not too high of a bar to it's pretty low bar set for him coming in. But now we just want to see him jump over that 4,000-yard passing mark. And back to that point about that completion percentage, where you were saying he was at that 68% through the first 2 preseason games. Just a little bit behind the scenes of that. Ben Johnson did say a 70% completion percentage, but they were grading it on an adjusted completion percentage scale, which that includes, passes like throwaways don't get counted towards that. They don't get docked towards him, and drops. Same thing as that when they break that down in the film room. And a little bit of credit to another podcast out there, CHGO. They kind of broke it down earlier this week in the show. So through training camp, his non-adjusted, just raw, doesn't matter if people drop the ball or him throw it away, he was at 58%. That's including the 2 preseason games, and that's also including all of training camp from start to finish. He was at that 58%. However, on that adjusted completion percentage, that takes away those drop balls, the catchable balls, and the throwaways, he was at a 71%, which is very good to see. Towards the start of the camp, we kind of talked on in our previous episodes, but it's kind of been a little bit of up and down. Kind of got off to a really rocky start, and then these past week and a half, it was like Caleb was stacking these days. Kind of right before that Buffalo Bills game last week, you were hearing day after day, it was just offenses doing good, they're looking good, not too many issues going on. However, last night, I think, kind of gave us a little bit check back to reality, kind of like you mentioned. They did set that bar high in that Buffalo Bills game. That first drive was all you can ask for as a Bears fan, especially, as we talked about with the national media just constantly harping on Caleb needs a couple of years. It's going to take a couple of years for this thing to really get rolling. And, he kind of went out there, did his thing, and silenced the media. And although, that game against the Chiefs on Friday night, it definitely didn't start off good at all on any part of the game, whether you're talking about the offense, defense, or special teams. It was all over the place, and they didn't look like they came ready to play. But as the time went on, that game, they kept putting together better and better drives. That first drive was a 3-and-out. Obviously, we had that, missed timing with that handoff to Olamide Zaccheaus. Second place, a false start. Next play, Caleb Williams tries to make a little bit of his magic rolls out. Nothing's really there, throws the ball away. And then on that third, I think it was a 3rd and 20, he found DJ Moore, came up a little bit short of the sticks. And then that second drive, they got a little bit more going, but still nothing really to be happy about. And then that third drive, that's when they finally took it down the field, kicked a field goal on the first team Chiefs defense. And then that final drive we saw from the offense is when they were, I will note, against the second team out there, the Chiefs pulled their starters. It was second stringers out there, but it looked a lot more cleaner, which is encouraging. But at the same time, that's what he is supposed to be doing when, you have backups out there. It should look that smooth and that clean. So it's still good to see, but I also, it was a little bit back to reality kind of moment this week where, we can slow down, our Bears hype that all us fans have before the season, and kind of gave us, a check back into reality. But it's also, a positive you can take away from it. They got some bad stuff on film that they can look at, learn from, and, move forward and fix those issues that they had in that game. And I know Ben Johnson will be, hungry, ready to do that.
Can we learn from the refs? Can we watch the tape and learn from the refs? Kansas City, I mean, it's preseason, and the refs are still calling in their favor. Poor Montez Sweat, right? We didn't do a lot of, blitzing or, heavy pressure on the QB, but he comes in there and he's definitely held. You see him throwing his arms in the air. I rewatched the game today and watched it from many different angles all that were available. Clearly held, and the Patrick Mahomes referee connection. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, Patrick Mahomes and the refs. I mean, it's the same relationship there. So, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, that's crazy. How in the preseason do you do that? And I get it. It's preseason for the refs too. Everyone's learning, and the head referee, was his first year as a head ref. But we got to get better at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't ever really like to complain about the refs, because at the end of the day, they're just doing their job. And, with the Chiefs being on that AFC side, the opposite side of the NFC, we don't get to play them often. We just kind of hear from other people, especially on that AFC side, about the refs and how, they always cater to the Chiefs and they get all the calls when it matters. And I mean, like I said, I don't like to complain about the refs, but there was a good amount of, penalties, especially the one that stands out to me is Dominique Robinson. It was a 3rd and 10, very crucial play. The Chiefs are at their like 40-yard line. We stop them. They can try a long field goal. They do got Harrison Butker over there, but could have been a punt. And Dominique Robinson gets up the field. Patrick Mahomes rolls out to his right, our left if you're on the defense, and here comes Trey Smith from the bottom of the screen and just hits him in the back of the numbers and flattens him. I'm like, are you serious? No flag, nothing. And that was one of the plays where Patrick Mahomes does his magic, rolls out and hits Juju Smith-Schuster, and they complete the first down. Like these are plays that, that's an obvious call. Anybody watching from a screen can be seeing that. And, there's a lot of people on social media saying, you guys need to learn the rules of football. There's a rectangular box, and as long as they're in there, which I did look it up, it is true, but it is 3 yards. It's within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. You go watch that back. Dominique Robinson was 6 yards behind the line of scrimmage, about to sack Patrick Mahomes, and then here comes Trey Smith. So that ruling's completely out of it.
Yeah, here's the other kicker to that ruling as well that they're gloss over because it's the Chiefs. When a defender is engaged with an offensive player in a blocking scheme, another person cannot come in and shove them in the back above the waist, which clearly that individual extended his arm, shoved him, which would have been definitely a block in the back. So again, it's just Chiefs home cooking. I mean, we know how it goes with the Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's the other one too was that first opening drive. I think it was the second play of the game. Nashawn Wright gets called for a pass interference call, which I already thought was questionable. The ball was thrown to him. The guy, as soon as the guy touches the ball, Nashawn Wright shoved him to the ground, and that was it. But then they're calling a face mask penalty, and they're enforcing both penalties for 30 yards on the opening drive. That's not how it works. You get to choose one or the other, which one you want to enforce. The only way where they can tack on that extra 15 is if that face mask or is an unsportsmanlike after the play was already over. That's when you can enforce both penalties. You don't get to enforce 2 penalties if they did happen on the same play. It's you pick one or the other. You don't get both of them. I mean, it was definitely, the refs were getting their preseason in too, but it looks like those refs are in mid-season form for the Chiefs at their home field. I mean, it is a little ridiculous. Like I said, I'm not the person to sit here and complain about refs because, they're just doing their job and, they might not see things just like if we were out there. You miss things. It happens. But when you're calling penalties that aren't actually happening or not even following the rule book, it's kind of hard to sit there and give them the benefit of the doubt. So it was definitely frustrating to see, but nonetheless, Patrick Mahomes did his thing out there against us, and I don't know if those penalties would have mattered or not. He probably would have still whooped our ass like he did. I know the Chiefs, they got off to a rough start in their preseason. The broadcasters were talking about it yesterday against the Seahawks. They looked really bad apparently out there, weren't really able to do anything. So this game was kind of them to come in and get them right before the season. And did they look right? That's for sure. It was play after play. It looked almost too easy. It was a little concerning from our defense. But I will say, I'm not making excuses, but 5 of our starters on our defense weren't out there. But the one concern for me is definitely our pass rush. It's been a problem for the past couple years. We're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback, and these better quarterbacks that can sit in the pocket, you're just giving them too much time. This is the professional level. You can't expect, especially our defense, how we like to run a lot of man-to-man. You can't expect our DBs to be running around hip to hip with these guys for 5-6 seconds. We need pressure to get there to make that quarterback's life difficult. And obviously, it can't happen on every play, but outside of a couple times against Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he was just sitting there in a wide open, clean pocket. So
I have a theory on it. You had the no call on the holding as we are getting pressure on the Mahomes. There was a couple other times that were in there, but it didn't seem like we were truly executing. And Dennis Allen, I think he ran a pretty vanilla defense. I think before the game, Andy Reid, Coach Johnson, gentleman's handshake. Please don't touch my quarterback. Is just part of the the further Mahomes conspiracy about getting things his way, because there wasn't. I mean, Dennis Allen's known for having a pretty ferocious defense, especially getting after the passer. And it never seems like we brought the house, but it did seem like the Chiefs were bringing the house every play throughout the whole game, whether it was Williams in the background or if it was Bagent back there. I do want to switch gears a little bit if we could and talk about my piece that concerned me during the game. And we talked about this, I think, in episode 2, the kicker. How does Santos miss a chip shot? I mean,
Okay, it's not a chip shot. It was
it's a chipper.
47 yard.
For
It's I mean, it's not dead. Okay, let a
We
chip
got
shot.
guys in the league putting down 70-yard field goals. Santos been in forever, and it's a chip shot for him. It's his only job. That's all he has to do is kick. And not only did he miss the chip shot, he missed the extra point.
No, the
I
extra
mean,
point got blocked. It got
he
blocked.
missed it. That's his fault. Blaming
Now
everything on that guy.
a block comes down to
I
that
just smell
offensive
the double
line.
doink happening this season.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope not, especially in a playoff game if we are in that stance. I cannot relive another day like that. But I mean, it is a little concerning. I wouldn't look too much into it. It definitely, like, I hear you. It's concerning. You don't like to see that, especially in Chicago, hitting. You don't want to see any field goal hit the upright, because it just makes you relive that nightmare against the Eagles in that playoff game. However, I wouldn't look too much past it. And I kind of agree with your point too. Kind of talking back what you were saying, where Dennis Allen was, kind of vanilla. At least I would say with the first team. And I've kind of noticed this trend a little bit, especially last week against Buffalo. I know our defense, I think they were only out there one series, but you know, when our second team's in there, you're seeing all these exotic blitzes. You're seeing double safety blitzes, linebackers shooting up the middle. When our first team was out there, we're rushing 4, maybe sending a linebacker here and there when we were playing against Mahomes. But for the most part, it was just rush 4, drop back. It was like, oh, we're back to Matt Eberflus days of just dropping back and playing shell. Like it I do think part of that is vanilla, because all the reports in training camp, even in the joint practices, when it's not just bears on bears, but you're hearing that he's sending these exotic blitzes, which I think he's trying to save a lot of them for that week 1 matchup, because both coordinators, Brian Flores from the Vikings and Dennis Allen, they're both exotic defenses that they're going to send pressure every play, and you're not going to know where it's coming from. They may line 7 guys right up at the line. You don't know who's dropping back. You don't know who's coming. It's always, chaos and trying to figure it out. So I think he's kind of conserving that, holding back, especially, a little side note too, the Vikings back-to-back weeks now have not played any of their starters. So maybe Dennis Allen's, just putting them out there every play. They're just playing simple man-to-man defense, rush 4, so they don't get much on tape of what we're going to be looking to do, which is smart. It may sound stupid to an average football fan, but these coaches, that's their job. They go watch this film, break it down, find habits and holes in teams. That's what you do. And if they put stuff on tape and it may look good, but the other coaches can see that and go find a hole in it and find plays where they can execute. When we see this look, we audible to this play, and that's where, the difference in coaching comes along. So I do understand it, but it was making me a little mad just seeing Patrick Mahomes back there having all the time in the world. And like you said, there were a few times where we did have that pressure. We just couldn't actually get our hands wrapped around him, whether that was due to holdings, blocking the backs, or just simply not being able to wrap him up and contain him. But still was good to see a good test nonetheless against a Super Bowl caliber team. I mean, since Patrick Mahomes has been there, they have not. The worst they've done is make it to the AFC Championship game. So it's crazy, but this isn't this. I'm so glad the Chiefs decided to play their starters. And I mean, they played everybody. Chris Jones was out there. I'm like, okay, like they're going to play their starters. I don't think Chris Jones will be there. He's older. They already know what he can do. No, they put their full on starting defense, their full starting offense out there. Which is kind of why it makes me a little bit mad that like people like Grady Jarrett, Joe Tooney, Tremont Edmonds, like seeing some of those players not play, I understand the injury side of it. But at the same time, if they're doing it, why not put our best guys out there? We have a rookie yesterday, Luke Newman, who, by the way, actually played a pretty decent game against Chris Jones, but we have a rookie out there at guard trying to block Chris Jones because Joe Tooney's not playing, but it was nonetheless a really good test. I'm absolutely stoked. It definitely, if the Stars were playing the whole game, we probably would have not come out on top of that game, but it still was a good test right before the season. And like I said earlier in the episode, you always want some sort of negatives to happen so you can go learn from that. As an athlete, if you're doing everything right, you're going to go into the season then thinking you have no holes. And if that's not on tape, you don't really know what your problems and issues are. So having a little bit of negative with some positive, I think, is a perfect balance. It gives them, these next 14 days to really go back in, hone in on what the details of what they need to execute a lot better, and go from there.
I think speaking of a positive, we're still undefeated since last year beating the Packers. I mean, how good does it get? Not only are we the champions of the offseason, we're also the champions of the preseason. And let's hope that train keeps on rolling into the first game of the season against the Vikings. And I'm going to go back to, that defense that Kansas City has. They're a real good defense. And I think it was a great test for that Brian Flores defense that we're going to have coming up in week 1 on Monday night against the Vikings. So hopefully we do learn, like you said, and we go back to the tape, take a look at it, see where we botched a play, right? We had the first play of the series that was, the botched handoff with the fumble. And hopefully we learn the timing, work on that. But it was a great test with Chris Jones being out there coming after us. And hopefully we can capitalize on that for week 1 and match up. But there's always the what if. What if week 1's bad? Is Tyson Bagent sitting in the shadows?
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely. I know this week for Bears fans, it was kind of the Tyson Bagent week, so we can talk a little bit about that. I know you opened it up a little bit with a statement just regarding Tyson Bagent, but this contract is well deserved. I hear, tons of my friends. I got buddies that are Packers fans, sadly, and they're all, you guys overpaid him. Why are you paying a backup quarter $10 million? Well, if you watch the Chiefs game and you watch that final drive under 2 minutes, no timeouts out, that's why he got paid $10 million. Because
And that pass, oh my God.
I mean, he had a couple of that opening pass where he floated it right over top of the cornerback to Jade Walker, which it was definitely a better catch than a throw. Jade Walker toe drag swag. It was such a good catch. The refs called it an incomplete pass, and they had to go back and look at it. Luckily, too, it was under 2 minutes, and every play is reviewable without a challenge. So it got looked at, and it was a catch, in fact. And then that last throw to win the game with 7 seconds on the clock, that was not only probably the best throw of preseason. It was also a great catch by Jade Walker. But I mean, that DB was all over Jade Walker, and Tyson puts it in the one spot where it gives your receiver a chance. And Jade Walker makes an amazing play. And I am really impressed with Tyson Bagent, and I don't want to go down that road of the what if with Tyson Bagent. What if, Caleb struggles? We're not at that point. I think Caleb has shown good progress in the preseason where we don't need to get to that point. But the good news is if it does get to that point, I have full confidence in Tyson Bagent too to go out there and execute. I mean, earlier this week in the press conference after Tyson Bagent got that extension, Ben Johnson just said they think so alike. Like their brains are wired the same way. They go about their business the same way. And Tyson Bagent it's now been 3 different coaching staffs that have come in here, 3 different offensive coaching staffs, and every single person is impressed with Tyson. That's not, one coach, a Luke Getsy comes in. Yeah, I like Tyson. And then it was last year. Shane Waldron comes in. As shitty as a coordinator he liked Tyson Bagent too. Probably the most important praise from Ben Johnson liking him. The guy's the best offensive coordinator in the league. At least he was with the Lions these past 3 years statistically. And when you're getting that kind of praise from a person like Ben Johnson, it should mean a lot. And I'm just happy for Tyson. We've talked about him a couple of times in previous episodes. Just a great story, undrafted kid who believed in himself, stayed at D2 at Shepherd University, broke all sorts of records, won the D2 Heisman. I mean, we got to give credit where credit's due. A lot of people harp on Ryan Poles too for his draft picks, say, some of them are bad picks, but in reality, I think all GMs have bad picks. It's literally, those first and second rounds, those are the ones you really need to hit on because those are kind of, guaranteed players. But those later rounds, the 3 through 7, those are kind of where you're throwing darts at a dartboard, hoping, what you've seen from this guy, and you have the belief that he can progress into a good player in the league. And I think he has a couple of those people this year on the team, being Kyle Monangai, but just with the Tyson Bagent undrafted, I mean, that is an insane find out of Ryan Poles and his scouting team to bring him in here and develop him. Like, first off, the Bears can never develop a starting quarterback. Now we have a backup quarterback that is getting developed and turning into a very good player. And more on that extension too. I don't care that we're paying him $10 million. I don't want to see him, kind of like I talked about last week. I don't want to see Tyson Bagent on another team and go win a Super Bowl. I mean, for his sake, I do want him to get that chance to be a starting quarterback. But as a Bears fan, I don't want to see it happen because it would be sickening to know we had this guy in our building and he win a Super Bowl with another team. It would hurt for a long time.
Speaking of comparables, and I know you were talking about Jade Walker and phenomenal job he did there, taking advantage of every opportunity he had, and hopefully makes the 53-man roster. But that wide receiver room is pretty full with a lot of good talent in there. I looked at that catch at the end where 7 seconds left, catches that touchdown pass. But it brought myself back to the beginning of the game when my number one QB, Caleb Williams, threw the ball to my first round top 10 pick, Rome Odunze, who couldn't seal the deal and bring it in. What say you? I mean, how can a top 10 pick not bring in a ball like that when Jade Walker is just making a miraculous catch? Is it more important to Jade Walker to make the team, and Rome Odunze just thinks it's okay, it's a preseason game, and I don't have to catch that ball? I was disappointed in Rome, and I'm a big fan of Rome, and I think he's got a lot of talent out there. Clearly, when his college days and with us, and he's continued to progress. And everyone's talking about him eventually being wide receiver one by the end of the year. But he's got to catch those balls. You can't drop those balls. I get it. He was in coverage, two people coming at him, but the ball was in his hand. So how do you drop that?
Yeah, I mean, just that play alone that you're talking about, it was a beautiful pass from Caleb Williams. That ball hit him right in his chest. I think, I'm not an NFL expert. I'm not a wide receiver coach, but those contested catches, your job is to go up there and extend your hands. That's why it's called the jump ball, kind of like the opening tip in basketball. You want to high point that football where the cornerback can't get his hands on it first. And he kind of tried catching that one with his body. Whether I'll have to go back and actually look at the play. Maybe the DB had one of his arms hooked, and he kind of had to catch it with his body. But at the
Nope.
same time, that's where, as a receiver, you're supposed to fight through that contact and still get your hands up and high point that football. And it definitely is. It should be a catch, especially hearing through the camp of just how good he's been really doing, and no balls really getting dropped by him. That was definitely disappointing to see. However, he did bounce back on that next play. Caleb, props to Caleb, went right back to him on an outbreaking post route, hits him, and he does a little shimmy, and honestly, almost scores the touchdown. I think he got tackled about the 3-yard line. And here comes Caleb again. Next route, little stick route, throws it, delivers a strike right in between two linebacker and a cornerback to Rome Odunze for the touchdown. So Rome definitely made up for it, but that's why we drafted Rome, is that 50-50 ball. He had the best jump ball rate at the college level his senior season. He had the highest contested catch rate in his senior season. So you'd love to see him come down with those. And I wouldn't be too discouraged about that as well, because last year, week 18 against the Packers, must have it. We're driving down the field to go kick that game-winning field goal. 4th and 5. Who comes down with that jump ball? Rome Odunze does. Back shoulder. The guy's already shown he can do it. Now it's just about, doing it on a consistent basis. They are 50-50 balls, but like you said, I didn't think the cornerback was on his hip, but at the same time, Rome was still able to get his chest and at least a hand, maybe if not two, on the football. You
He had
gotta
two.
Yeah, you gotta grasp that ball, and that's my only advice. Don't catch it with your body. It's especially so I feel like it just really depends, but those 50-50 balls, if you're playing a better cornerback and you're trying to catch it with your chest, they're just gonna swat the ball away before you even have a chance to touch the ball. So, you got to kind of go up, make a play on it. But it was a great throw from Caleb. They sent the blitz on it. A guy came running through, a linebacker came running right free. Even though it's preseason, Caleb stood there like you're supposed to, threw the ball and took the hit afterwards. And, it was good to see. It was scary at first because when they showed that replay, I remember being like, oh my God, is he all right? Because he got rocked pretty hard. But one thing about Caleb that we learned, especially from his rookie season, although, those 68 sacks were a negative on him, it showed his toughness. The guy didn't miss a game. He didn't miss a snap. The guy's tough as nails. He goes out there, he takes hits. So it was good to see. But like you said, I think Rome bounced back those next two plays, punched it in the end zone for them. And that one, we don't really get to see Rome kind of. I feel like when we saw Rome last year, it was a lot of, routes where he's catching the ball and getting tackled instantly, not really having a chance to make a play with the football. But yesterday with that outbreaking route I was talking about, where he shook that defender off, I mean, he gave that guy the 1-2-3 and was right past him. It was cool to see, and I'm looking to see more of that. I want to see Rome get the ball in space this year and kind of see what he can do. Because we have a lot of guys on this team that, have that yard after catch ability, with DJ Moore. DeAndre Swift's one of them in that passing game. When he gets the ball, if you're not within 2 yards of him, he's going to make you pay and he's going to get extra yards out of that. Olamide Zaccheaus, I mean, the guy is electric. He catches the ball and he's like a lightning in a bottle. Now I just want to see that from Rome as well. And Colston Loveland yesterday too, he had a catch where he had a one-on-one opportunity and he let the linebacker bring him down. And he still caught the ball, did his job, but I kind of wanted to see him break one off, that bigger physical tight end kind of push that guy off. It was a linebacker, so it is a little bit different, but I'm really excited with Ben Johnson's offense. He runs a lot of those crosser routes over the middle, where he gives his guys a lot of chance to, get that ball and turn up field and go make a play. So definitely excited.
And you brought up DeAndre Swift. Was he telegraphing that he's the Saquon Barkley rushing leader this year with his hurdle over the defender after he catches the ball? I was looking at some numbers on it, and his best year was when he was with the Eagles behind that offensive line. And obviously, we've upgraded our offensive line quite a bit, and some of the starters weren't out there. But I almost think like he was sending a message because who hurdles and leaps over a defender in preseason unless they're out there with a mission? And we haven't seen him a lot this preseason, which had me a little concerned until we saw the action last night. But he looked pretty good. I felt really confident in the running back we got in him. Not to mention Brown, the one we signed from the Raiders. He is a hard physical runner. But DeAndre Swift, I think we might see some flashes of the 2023 DeAndre Swift and the one we knew from Georgia when he was playing in the SEC. So I was pretty excited. What'd you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, in preseason, like you said, kind of trying putting your body on the line in preseason, because those hurdles, that's a 50-50 chance. They're either going low or they're catching you and they're slamming you to the ground. And to see him do that in the preseason was really impressive. It kind of shows his heart and what it means to him. He doesn't care that it's a preseason game. He's trying to go get that first down because I think, if I remember correctly, that was the second or third drive where the offense was already kind of off to a rough start. And that I do remember that play was kind of like the first play. I'm like, okay, here we go. Like someone's stepping up, like trying to make a play. And, I did remember he did after the hurdle, little nitpick, did step out of bounds where he could have cut it upfield a little bit more, but that left foot, I think, hit out of bounds. But nonetheless, it turned out to be 3rd and 1 the next play. And I remember talking to you and be like, here we go. 3rd and 1. Gotta have it. Watch us just get stuffed right in the backfield. But DeAndre Swift, props to him, puts his head down, just runs, no hesitation. Head down, see you later. I'm going to run you over and get the first down. Definitely encouraging to see. I think we are in good shape with DeAndre Swift. I know we saw a couple of times yesterday with those short yardage situations. He did convert, but that's what does worry me a little bit about DeAndre Swift. It's just he isn't that bigger guy. And a lot of times, too many times we saw last year, that first guy would bring him down almost every time. in those short yardage situations, which is something that cannot happen. Like as a running back, you're not supposed to, that's your job. You're supposed to break tackles and make guys miss. And when you're letting the first guy bring you down, it's not a good sign, especially in that short yardage. It's one thing, you try to bounce a play to the outside, but in the short yardage, gotta have it. You cannot be letting one guy wrap you up and bring you down. And that's why I think Kyle Monangai is going to be that guy for us. We saw him a little bit in that Buffalo game, but that guy puts his head down and he hits and he keeps those legs moving. And it'll be interesting. Roschon has been dealing with an injury, and that first live practice Ben John hosted, where it was a straight goal line running, and all the reports were Roschon Johnson was dominating. Like he was getting all the goal line carries, carrying people on his back, running in the end zone. And if anybody's going to get, something out of Roschon Johnson, it's Ben Johnson. Previous staffs, I don't feel like, even last year, his rookie year, we definitely didn't use him right. He barely touched the field.
Yeah.
And then last year, we used him a little bit, but still, I don't think we even got to see what he really could do. And I think if Roschon can get healthy before this 53-man roster, which, by the way, is coming up on Tuesday, the 26th, depending on how that injury is, I mean, Roschon could be off this team, and I still think he's going to find a spot on another team. Don't get me wrong, but if he can get past that injury and, make a spot on this team, I think Ben Johnson is going to use him a lot in that goal line. And the cool thing about that is, since he has been hurt, kind of like DeAndre Swift, we didn't see anything until that Friday game against the Chiefs. No one's going to see what Ben Johnson has cooked up for Roschon when that time comes, and that could be an advantage in our favor. And I do want to see someone use Roschon correctly, because he should be in those goal line situations. The gotta have it. This guy is a big back, big, massive. I remember his rookie year. It was week 1. We were playing the Packers, and first play of the game, he just runs over a safety on like a 15-yard run. I'm like, holy smokes, this guy. And the cool thing about Roschon is he played behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, so he doesn't have all that mileage and wear and tear that running backs kind of have in the NFL, which, unless you're a Derrick Henry or a Saquon Barkley, a running back span in the NFL is about 3 to 5 years now, and he doesn't have that much mileage on him. He's a pretty fresh running back that hasn't taken a lot of damage, and I'd love to see someone use him correctly. So, hopefully Ben Johnson, can get that out of him, because I do feel like we haven't used him correctly in the previous years.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was thinking too, when you brought up Texas, where he was behind Bijan, and I was super excited when we drafted him, just because of what he did do down there at Texas, and knowing that him and Bijan shared that backfield. And they're talking this year, Bijan in fantasy is going to be one of the number one draft picks in the league, because they're finally figuring out how to use him down there. If you remember correctly, they didn't use him right the first few seasons there either. So hopefully, he gets healthy. We figure out if he makes the 53-man roster. And it could be, just some precautionary efforts to let him rest up before the season starts. And we already know he's going to be that number 2, based on what he's already done in training camp. But it will be exciting as that 53-man roster comes out. I think it'll give us a better picture of what week 1 looks like, especially based on what we've seen so far in the preseason. And quite honestly, if we win week 1, we're still undefeated, which will be great. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think with what we saw between the Bills and the Chiefs game, we're in a pretty good position to continue to win. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup, and seeing how that all works out. And we'll go from there. We'll just keep being Bears fans and being excited.
Yeah, no, definitely excited for the real season. I want these games to start mattering. Obviously, it's going to come with some emotions, coming from us and fans. There's going to be, whether you want to admit or not, there's going to be moments where we're on here. Why did we do that? Why did we do this? Why couldn't you do that? It's going to happen. It happens every year. And even with Ben Johnson being a good coach, there's going to be moments where he's going to face adversity that he isn't used to in that head coaching role. And it's going to happen. But I think, one good thing we can take away, and we've hit on this on every episode so far, but just the impact that Ben Johnson has already had, it is like night and day difference from what we've been used to, especially these past, 4 or 5 years. It is night and day. I mean, I think, something that's already been getting, I think, overlooked or underlooked, I mean, is, Ben Johnson in that game against the Chiefs on Friday night. I think he showed, his play calling / head coaching, time management, whatever you want to call it, in that 2-minute drive with no timeouts. I mean, I remember watching that game. First play comes. That's when Jahdae Walker makes that, sick catch that didn't even look like it was going to be catchable. Honestly, in my eyes, when I saw the ball come out, I thought it was going the other way. Pick six, game over. But they kept showing the play on the broadcast, and then right after the play, they would go to Ben Johnson and show his body language, and immediately, he's got the play call over his mouth, and he's just instant, no second guessing, just calling the plays. He knows what's next. He knows the situation. I mean, I am so excited to just see a full game of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, and from start to finish. I know, yes, with the Buffalo game, we only got 2 series. And then with the Chiefs game, it was good to see the starters out there till halftime pretty much. I mean, this is another aspect that is getting underlooked by Ben Johnson. He said in the press conference, I'm sure he was just looking out for his players, taking the blame. But he said, we had a certain set number of snaps and goals, and, the first team hadn't hit it yet. So we kept him out there. Cut the bullshit.
I have a theory.
What?
My theory is this: typically the third game of the preseason, or in the old schedule with the fourth game, you always just had your bubble players out there, right? You're trying to decide who's going to make that roster. And if we all remember correctly, back when we had Trubisky, general managers had to make a decision: do we have the team now to win? And they went out and got Khalil Mack. Well, guess what? We were wrong. Trubisky wasn't it. I think this game, for as much as they played, they were trying to decide, do we have the team now to win? Because we know there's some DNs out there still with some contract situations. And I think he put him out there and was only going to go, he was going to match, right, for Mahomes and go for, what was it, 2-3 series, probably pull him out. But then when he's like, I don't know, he didn't have a good first series, we got to think about it. Do we really have it? Poles has got to see if this is the team that we can win it all with. And that's why they end up playing the full half. And I mean, I don't think Micah Parsons is coming to the team anytime soon after yesterday's game, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're doing another one of your takes where it's a little far stretched, but it's happened in the past. Granted, Ryan Poles wasn't here for that, and Ryan Poles is a better GM and doesn't make decisions like Ryan Pace. But I was just want to jump back to my other point, just kind of wrap it up about Ben Johnson. Why he actually kept the starters out there. He kept them out there because we've seen it time and time again. When stuff isn't done the right way, you're doing it until you get it right. And that was kind of the message that I kind of got from the starters playing till halftime, because those first 2 drives were ugly. They weren't good. They just simply weren't good enough. That third drive, it was like they started to piece a little bit of stuff better, drove down to about the 15, and, couldn't punch that ball in the end zone, sadly, but kicked a field goal. And then that final drive, top it off with a touchdown. I mean, this coach, I can't say enough about him. I mean, people all offseason, can he lead men? Is he going to be able to work with Caleb? This guy can work with anybody. I mean, he is. I'm so excited we got Ben Johnson. I mean, sure enough, that phase could change, but I'm telling you right now, if the season don't work out the way, I can bet you money it's not because of Ben Johnson. It's because of other people. It'll now get pointed at the players, certain players not doing their job to their full potential, because Ben Johnson, we've seen him all summer. We've seen the training camp. We've heard the reports. Ben Johnson is not the problem. This guy has shifted this culture. It's a complete 180. And, as a Bears fan, you can't be nothing but excited going into this season. And, I think he's going to have, them ready to go week 1 against the Vikings. Like you said, the Bills game was a good test of, it was a really amazing game. Like there's not many flaws you could pick out of it on any side of the ball, offense, defense, or special teams, because the Bills offense scored 0 points and our offense scored 38 points. There's not really much you can take from that. And then the Chiefs game was a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, probably a lot more bad, but that's where you can kind of, get an idea in between the Bills and the Chiefs game of kind of where we're at right now. And, if I had to put something on that, I would say it's a little bit above middle of the pack right now, maybe in all NFL teams, just overall. I'm talking offense, defense, special teams. I think it's a little bit above middle of the pack between those two games. But like I said, I'm still really liking my prediction at 10-7 going into the season. I do feel like it's gonna, and Bears fans have to be prepared. I think it is gonna get not off to a rocky start, but I think a majority of those 7 losses I have are gonna come in that first half of the season, and then towards the back half is when it's gonna get really cleaned up and things are gonna start flowing. Because I know that first half of the season, we obviously got, 2 division opponents right off the bat with the Vikings and the Lions. We got right in that towards the middle. That's where we got the Eagles and Bengals stretch. I do think, a good majority of those 7 losses are going to come on the front half of the season. And it could have Bears fans a little bit worried, but I do think by midseason, I think this team is going to really start clicking on a lot of levels. And I mean, it's exciting. And I think it's really encouraging to, Caleb, did start off training camp pretty rough, was struggling. There was no really consistency. And then the second half of the training camp, you were hearing nothing but good things. I think outside of that one practice after the Bills game, they had a really sloppy practice. But since then, it's just been all uphill, positive. Yes, there's still some pre-snap penalties that are happening, which definitely need to get cleaned up. But outside of that, as far as delivering the football, playing in rhythm, Caleb's been doing that the back half of training camp, which is, kind of shows to me those install periods. Ben Johnson said there was 12 installs. They got wrapped up with those, right before that Buffalo game. And then anything after that, it's just been, working on, growing on those, figuring out which plays they can run. So I just think you're seeing, Ben Johnson really put together a master plan going into this. And now they have 2 weeks to really hone in. And actually now it comes down to game planning for a team where they're going to, go out there and game plan. And I'm just super confident going into the Vikings. Just Caleb, even his rookie year, granted how bad his rookie season was, the division games is when Caleb really played up to his potential that, we all thought he was. Against the Vikings, Detroit, the Packers, even both Packers game, all those division games were close, and all 3 of those teams went to the playoffs. And I'm super excited. I just can't wait for it to be here.
I'm just gonna say you reiterated and reconfirmed my prediction on the year of 15-2 because you just said it, right? In the division, think about it. The Detroit game, we almost won. The stupid Commanders game with the gosh darn Hail Mary. Realistically, we should have, had 8 wins.
We should have about 3 more wins last
3
year.
more wins, which would have been 8, 8 total wins. Ben Johnson bump, another 7 wins on top of it, and plus all the talent we got around it. I'm sticking with my 15-2, regardless of the errant play yesterday in the first series. And I think we're going to be excited. Now, I'm going to counter you. If I think Ben Johnson is a coach that if Caleb isn't winning those first 4 to 7 games, Tyson's in. I don't think he's going to let that play out with Caleb based on everything I've seen from him. When he pulls the first team off the field and says you're not practicing anymore, go watch the second stringers execute the play. I have a feeling he's the coach. He's going to make him sit and say, here, let's see what Tyson can do. Because I think Tyson executes the offense a little bit better, in my opinion, based on what I see. Now, granted, it's against second stringers. And third stringers and fourth stringers and people trying to make the roster. But
Also, my only pushback to that is just, okay, it'd be different if Caleb, for example, that Buffalo Bills game and that last drive against the Kansas City Chiefs second string, If Caleb was out there not converting and making plays, but Tyson was against him, that's one thing. But Caleb's doing the same thing. If Caleb was in there like Tyson is, he'd be doing the same thing, if not better, because he's already proved it. He was in there, the Bills game against the second string and backups, and what did he do? He marched down the field, and we're all like, oh my God, this looks great. He's in rhythm. He's in timing. He's running the offense. And then same thing. Kansas City second string comes in. What he's doing, he marched down the field, scores a touchdown. He's doing the same thing. They're both great quarterbacks. Let's slow the roll on that little Tyson. I do think, obviously, depending on how ugly it is a huge. Now, if we're getting blown out in these games and there's no offensive production, you're 100% right. It could get halfway through the season, and guess what? It might be, hey, Caleb, but even then, if it even is that ugly, I don't think it's going to do that. I think they'll take the whole year, kind of like they did that first year with Jared Goff. The Lions won, I think it was 3 games that year with Jared Goff, and it was ugly all season, but you just keep going and look where they're at now. Ben Johnson has even worded again, it's a work in progress. This is year 1. Ben Johnson's offense is so complicated that it takes multiple years because all these plays have different variations and spinoffs that, could happen in these plays. But right now they just got the basic thing, which is still a lot and confusing for most NFL offenses. So I don't think let's slow down with that whole role. And like I said, bro, they're both great quarterbacks. I think they're both, if any of them have to play, I have full confidence and belief that they're going to play a good game. And let's just be thankful that if Caleb does get hurt or something happens, we have a guy that we know can go in there and execute Ben Johnson's offense. Let's stop.
Absolutely.
Listen, we've had enough of tearing down. We don't got a quarterback. They suck. Now we have 2 of them. Everyone just take a second and breathe a little bit. It's refreshing. I know it's like so unknown for us to have 2 quarterbacks, but let's appreciate it because we've been looking for one for a while.
That's a true statement. I'm telling you right now, if he plays like he played in the Bills game, that first series, 100% 15-2, no questions asked, because he was operating on a different level with that series. And even in the Chiefs game,
he had that's the thing. Let's before we wrap this thing up, let's break that down real quick. After watching the all 22 back, there's 2 plays that come to mind where I think Caleb, could have essentially done better or did something a little bit different. I don't remember the exact down. I think it actually was 2nd and 2, and this is the negative play. He drops back. It is a pass play. Everything did look covered up. Cole Kmet came open late in the seam, but at that point, all the linemen are pushed up in his face. But he did have that old flashback of him just sitting there in the pocket, just holding the ball, trying to find. And then by the time when he does try escaping to go do his play, it's already too late. And that's kind of where that eternal clock in his head has to go off and be like, okay, nothing's open. Let's go run or throw this ball out of bounds. Don't keep sitting there and let that pocket just keep collapsing unless you have a receiver, who's going to come open. That's when you sit in the pocket, take the hit or, let that play out. But that play was pretty covered up, and Dan Orlovsky did a good job, but Cole Kmet does come open late in that play. But at that point, the pocket is so condensed that he probably didn't even see him because, you could start seeing him like try to figure out how he's going to get out of there and ultimately ends up in a sack. And instead of it being, 3rd and 2, live to play another down, it turns out 3rd and 9. And, we end up, I think that was the second series, and we end up, having to punt the ball away. And then the other play, I think that third drive in that red zone in the third, I think it was 3rd and 5, where he threw that ball to Rome Odunze. He did kind of, at first when I watched it, it looked like it went right off of Rome's hand in live action. And I'm like, Rome, come on, man. He had that one drop on that 3rd down against the Bills. Then, the jump ball we already talked about. And then that, but watching it back, no. If Rome didn't get his hand on that ball, I mean, it was a missile, so the DB still might have not have caught it, but it could have easily been an interception if Rome didn't get his hand on. Like he ended up sticking out one arm just to deflect the ball enough so that the cornerback couldn't have a clean, just straight ball right at him. And that play, DeAndre Swift, he kind of runs that one of the, it's like a hesitation route out the backfield and just sits right where the linebackers usually are. I don't think he would have, it would, even if he threw it to him, it would have converted the first down because there was 2 linebackers like draped right behind him. But at the same time, it would have been a positive play. Then, you're in 4th or 2, 4th and 3. Ben Johnson probably says, you know what, let's roll the dice and go for this. Instead, it's a 4th and 5 against the Chiefs starters. We haven't got any points. Let's just kick the field goal. Those were the 2 plays looking back where I'm like, you definitely could have done something better. But outside of that, he got the ball out. He found the guy. It was crazy because I think watching the game, it deceived your eyes a little bit because we weren't really getting any points off of it. Because I remember at halftime after the first couple drives, we talked to each other and I'm like, oh my God, Caleb's 6 for 9 for 72 yards. And we're like, what? Like, it doesn't even feel like he's thrown for 30 yards. But since we're not, having those big explosive plays and scoring points, your eyes kind of deceive yourself. But when you go back and watch it, it wasn't all that. He was still getting the ball out, giving his receivers a chance to make a play. And then the times when he did roll out and scramble, which I think was one time, he tried doing his magic. Nothing was there, threw the ball, lived another play, another down. So I think it's important, it wasn't Buffalo, we're doing 30-yard passes every play and the ball's down in the end zone in 30 seconds. No, it wasn't that. But from a quarterback's perspective of just playing on timing, getting the ball out, for the most part, he did that. He was 11. I have it right here. I think he was 11 for 15, finished up 11 for 15, 113 yards, 1 touchdown. I think it was 116 or 126. I can't remember passer rating.
116.
Yeah, I mean, he played, a good game. That's back-to-back preseason games over 100 pass rating. I wonder how many of those he had last year. Not to harp on him, but it might have been 4 or less, to be honest. It is what it is, but I think, it's very positive. And like I said, I'm so happy that there was, things that we can learn from this because the Chiefs are, so I'm so happy the Chiefs played their starters. If it was their second stringers, they probably wouldn't have been able to pull much from this game, but that Chiefs defense is a top defense in the league. And it's a good film for these coaches to go back and learn and coach up the players and see how they want to do things different and execute at a better level. So definitely excited. Is there anything you want to hit on before we get out of here? Any last, comments? I know at the end of the shows, you kind of like to make some ridiculous statements. So now's the time.
I already made my one ridiculous statement with Micah Parsons. I will say too, in that game, it was interesting to watch the coach call some of the same plays that Caleb ran and also Tyson ran. So obviously we know the first play, we won't beat on it anymore, where the fumble
Jet
happened,
sweep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then did you notice Tyson ran the same thing, but it was with Luther Burden and it was successfully executed?
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked
It's
beautiful.
yeah.
It's a great play.
Yeah, that probably would have it would have actually, if you're looking at it from just a week to week standpoint, that play probably would have been a perfect play to run off the bat because last week, if you remember, the opening play was a fake run boot action to Colston Loveland in the flat for a nice 8-9 yard completion, and Spagnola's a great coordinator. They're probably thinking, they're scheming, they're practicing like it's a real game. They're probably thinking Ben Johnson's going to open the same thing, little play action play. But no, it was just a hard jet sweep. And like we said, it comes down to Caleb getting that timing right. And same thing with Zacchaeus, kind of, did he run too fast? That's something we'll never know. That's more between the players and the coaches. Center too. Maybe Caleb said, hi, and, it took that extra second for the center to give him the ball, and that timing was off. But it definitely, I think we've already, and we're kind of being a dead horse, but we've kind of hit on it, when it comes to, that those are scripted plays that they've been practicing, for the opening drive. And to see that happen is just unacceptable. And I think both Caleb and Ben Johnson addressed that in their press conference. And, they're looking to improve. Luckily, it's not a game that matters, but let's clean it up before it does matter here in 2 weeks.
And one last thing, we didn't talk about it at all, but it was a beautiful play by Caleb. What about the QB when he took off running with that ball?
Oh, dude.
He had jets. I mean, them
I'm
legs were going.
And that's what is interesting too, because last year we did see sometime once Thomas Brown took over, some at least compatible offensive coordinator started using some of those read options with Caleb. That play action boot that Caleb ran, I'm sure it was a designed boot where he could run, or there was routes probably coming over the top of that where he could throw to, and he probably turned his head and exactly what we saw him run for 20 yards, because he probably was like, holy smokes, look at all this green grass, and took off. And like you said, I mean, I was like, holy, like that wasn't a linebacker run, that was a cornerback, and he was outrunning him. He just got forced to the sidelines eventually where, you don't want to take a hit, and he took it out of bounds. But I was like, now there is one critique on that play, him swinging that ball out there. And I know all quarterbacks do it, but at the same time, let's see that ball a little bit more secure, not just waving down there, because next thing you know, a defender jumps to tackle him or, make a diving tackle and they hit that ball out. More chances than not, it's just going to get knocked out of bounds, but you never know. And let's just keep that ball a little bit more secure than flinging it down there. You just think how fast these guys are running. How does the ball not just go? They just not throw it up the field because they're just running like this with it. And it's like, I don't know. It was, but he, like you said, he had wheels on that play, and it was cool to see. And I'd love to see him. The guy's a playmaker, man. When he's outside of the pocket, he's gonna make plays, and that's where those fans and people coming out of college would compare him to the Mahomes, because Mahomes, he did it against us, in that game with the Juju Smith-Schuster, that controversial third down play that, should have got called back. But they both roll out of the pocket, and, they teach quarterbacks, do not throw across your body. Well, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and Caleb Williams, that rules out the window, because these guys can sling it any direction, no matter they're running to the left or the right. They can throw across their body. They're playmakers. And I that's why I do hope, Ben Johnson still lets him be a little bit free in that aspect. And maybe he can hone it in with those kind of plays where it's a play action boot, not just a play action in the pocket. The play action boots, you give them that dual threat option to run or, throw the ball. And I want to see, Caleb did it a lot last year where he would fake like he's running and at the last second pull up and throw the ball down the field. It's stuff like that where it's like, that makes the defense second guess, and you can get big chunk plays off of stuff like that. And it'd be cool to see if Ben Johnson implements a little bit of that with also the pocket passing, because let's not just hone him in and make him a pocket passer. He has a God-given ability to go make plays outside of the pocket when it's necessary. So don't take that away from him. And I don't think Ben Johnson is, but I definitely am excited just to see it all put together with a full game plan. We've kind of seen bits and pieces now in this preseason of just some vanilla plays, but now we're going to get to see a whole game plan, a full playbook unleashed in a game in 2 weeks. So couldn't be more excited.
Going to be definitely excited. And I'm going to leave this with everyone before we wrap this one up. Like sugar plums dancing in your head before Christmas. That look on Patrick Mahomes' face when we finally, do the scoring drive at the end to win the game. That grimace, the kind of the smirk he had when we go 15-2 and we're in the Super Bowl. I want to see that same look at the end of the game from his face, because we just pulled it off with 7 seconds left. So with that, I'm excited for the season to begin. I know we got a couple weeks here before we have our Monday night game. It's gonna be one for the record books. I think the city of Chicago is gonna get electrified, not only from the coaches and the play calling on both sides of the ball and special teams, but ultimately all of our offensive and defensive weapons as they extract the best talent they have out of them. It is going to be one of those seasons that probably Bears jersey sales may be at an all-time high. It's going to be that contagious, I believe. One time I burnt my jersey because of Bears play. I won't say whose jersey I burned.
I'll say it for the viewers. Jay Cutler. See you later, buddy.
You know, if you look at the history of the Bears, right? Eric Kramer's number one, and then you got Jay Cutler with his records, and then Caleb Williams with his rookie season. I I think 15-2. I'm still sticking with it. I feel it in my gut, and I've seen flashes of it in this preseason with all the elements combined. So I hope the fans are just as excited as we are for this year, and I can't wait to continue talking Bears with you. as we continue to get into week 1.
Yep, definitely excited. We'll end it on that note. Definitely ready for the real season to start where, these games start mattering, but we'll leave it at that for this week. We appreciate all you guys tuning in. If you've made it to this point in the video, please make sure to, give us a like, comment, subscribe, give us your thoughts going into the season, what you're excited for most. But that'll be it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one. And for now, bear down.